So I have a lot of people that I love in this room, even the people that I don't know. I have the same type of love and compassion for you as well. And so who I see in this room are people that I used to work with. So I spent wonderful 22 years working for Clark County Family Services as a therapist, working with abused and neglected children. And that was part of my journey of learning who I am. So the degrees that you get, you know, you go through college and everything, and you have this career in mind. And really what life is all about is connecting with a love that can overcome anything. And so my journey took me to abused and neglected children who define themselves by what has happened to them. And so because they define themselves as what's happened to them, they have a lot of anger and a lot of sadness. And it hinders them from loving themselves. And when it hinders them from loving themselves, they can't love other people. And it's hard for people to love them because all they see is their behavior. And so it takes someone who has been through the fire of abuse and neglect themselves to see that it's possible to come on the other side of that. And what happens is, what burns off is your identity. You no longer identify yourself with what has happened to you. You begin to identify yourself with who you truly are, which is non-matter. Now, that doesn't make sense. Because I can look in the mirror and I can see I have matter. I can see that this world sees me as a Black woman. I get that. But if that's all I got, oh wow, you're in for a ride. Because your true identity is energy. It is love, energy, and compassion. And when you really get in connection with that, what burns off is what's happened to you. What burns off is what other people see. What burns off is the matter that you see in the mirror. And you're able to love fully. You're able to love fully. And so what do I call this energy? I call this energy light. Because that's what the source is. The source of creation is light. Let there be light. And with that frequency, you transcend matter. I'm not going to get into the physics of that today, but I just know that we call this source, this God source, light. And in the Bible it says you are the light of the world, and let your light so shine that you honor your Father in heaven. Now what does that mean? That really means that wherever I go, I have the love energy and it goes with me. Now what does that mean? That means that when I'm at Walmart in aisle 7, I am love, light, source. Walking in aisle 7, getting eggs, getting whatever. And so you bring it into your daily life. This does not have to be mystical. It doesn't have to be woo-woo stuff. It doesn't have to be religious. It means that wherever you go, you let that light shine no matter what's going on in your life and no matter what's going on in the world. Why? Because that is your identity, you see. It's not something you put on at church and then leave the parking lot and then you're like this different thing. It's not that you go to work and as soon as somebody does something that you don't agree with, you turn into that other thing. It means that your identity is anchored and bonded with the light. Now, a lot of people will say, well, how does that happen? How do you do that? How can you be consistent with it? How can you really envelop this as your identity? Well, first of all, we have to acknowledge that we are not what's on our driver's license. That even though my name is Carmen Smith, I can kind of relate to that. But Smith is my married name, and I'm no longer married, so my maiden name is Harris. Harris was a slave name from my slave master. So, yeah, okay. Don't know what my African name is, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever. The point is that when you identify with a name, that's very limiting, because you don't really know what your name is, really. I know I don't. So what do I identify with? Well, what about identifying with the source, the creator, the thing that made me? And if the entity that made me, its basic element is love and compassion, then that would identify me even more than my name. And as far as gender, what is gender really? We know that God has male and female energies, yin and yang. We know that when they're combined, creation happens. Within my personality, I have male and female characteristics. When I'm bonded with those characteristics, I am at my most powerful. Do I need to be firm and strong? Absolutely. Do I need to be nurturing? Absolutely. Do I need to be imaginative? Absolutely. And all of those are characteristics of the light, the source. So if I identify with those attributes and I'm bonded with them, in Kabbalah, it talks about your equivalence of form with the Creator. Wouldn't you want to be powerful? Wouldn't you want to be creative? Wouldn't you want to be abundant? Wouldn't you love to be confident? Wouldn't you want to go with the flow, knowing that creation is happening because you are walking, living, breathing creative energy? And that wherever you go, things are creating and forming for your best good and for all of those around you's best good. I know I would. And so why not identify with that which is limitless? I'll give you an example. I did a talk with Marianne Williamson a few months ago, and she talks a lot about race and changing the political climate, and she's also putting in a bid or thinking about putting in a bid for running for president in 2020. Those of you who don't know who Marianne Williamson is, she's a spiritual teacher, and she wrote the book Return to Love, which is one of my favorite books. And she was talking to me and she said, Carmen, I think you should really do a talk on racism and African Americans in the United States. And I said, yeah, I could do that. But it would have to be about how you transcend race, how you transcend the color of your skin. Because the color of the skin is something that people use to divide people, but it is not a thing. It is a thing that creates fear within people for political purposes, but it's not really a thing. And so when we believe all of these illusions about what's going on with race and the fear that it creates, then we become robots reacting to the climate that we find ourselves in. But once we transcend race, we're limitless. We're not who people say we are. We know who we are. And that goes for all people. So how does light view race? As a way to transcend. Remember we talked about burning off the events that have happened to us, the perceptions that we believe. Race is a way, it is a path, it is a journey to the burning off process. So once you transcend that, no one can tell you or manipulate you or control you once you transcend what they told you you were. Let me repeat that. No one can control you. No one can manipulate you. No one can frighten you once you've transcended what they told you you were. You have the power to define yourself. And when you define yourself as the highest possible vibration, which is light, then you are limitless. You are powerful. You are creative. And you can love fully. Now, when I was working with kids that have been abused and neglected, there would be a lot of popping off of anger. They're housed in a shelter called Child Haven, and there would be a lot of anger because the kids were defining themselves by the anger, the critical energy that they came from, their parents, the system, whoever. And so they were exhibiting this anger. And so they didn't know who they were. Let me repeat that. They didn't know who they were. They were defining themselves by the smallest box that you could put them in. And that was how people treated them. Never define yourself in this way. That is the smallest box you can put yourself in. So what does it take for them to open up? They need to have an example. An example of a clear vessel. And you get that by forgiveness, which is the gateway drug, by the way, to spirituality, is forgiveness. When I give these talks and I'm talking about these things, people will wonder, well, how do you get to, what's the secret sauce? What are you talking about? How do I do? And I'm like, who have you not forgiven? Who do you feel victimized you? Because as soon as you allow that energy in, that somebody has victimized you, you have put yourself in a box of identity. You have labeled yourself on the outside of that box as a victim. And as soon as you do that, you can't see that you're powerful and beyond measure and that you're pure light. And so these kids taught me at Clark County Family Services never to define yourself as a victim. Even though those kids were victimized, there's another way of viewing it and forgiving the person or people that did the abuse. Now let's talk a little bit about forgiveness, because sometimes people think of that as the F word. So forgiveness is not saying to the other person, I approve of what you did. And that gets people stuck. That's not what forgiveness is. That is a myth. That is a lie. I don't know how that got started, but I don't think it got started by a therapist, because I've never said that. that you just say, oh, it was great what you did. Never mind. What forgiveness is loving yourself enough to say, every part of my creativity, my gifts, need to flow freely from me. And they can't flow freely from me as long as I have an awareness in my consciousness that you took something from me. So let me repeat that one again. You were put on this planet, you have gifts, you have wonderful stories to tell, you have love inside you, and in order for it to flow freely, you cannot hold on to the idea that somebody took something from you, that you are less than, because that stifles your flow. And you are here to flow and love freely. And so we need to always be flowing with that. And anytime we hold, and just think of what I just did, you hold, and I'm clenching my heart with a fist. Anytime you hold unforgiveness towards somebody, you're restricting your flow. And so you never want to restrict your flow, because right now, in this crisis time, we need light. And light doesn't come from that other person over there. I hope they get it together. I hope they, and we're looking outside of ourselves, right? So we always need to say, the light within me needs to flow freely, because wherever there is darkness, there is an absence of light. Wherever there is darkness, there is an absence of light. And so it's not up to somebody else to bring the light, because we never want to be dependent on something that we can freely give ourselves. So this is the way light works. Light vibrates out. So when you open yourself and you have released the grip on your flow, and you are flowing with that light, it cannot help but affect your family. It definitely affects you. And you can feel it. You can feel a shift. It vibrates out to your family, and then they begin to feel it. And then it vibrates out to your job and the people you work with, and they begin to feel it. This is magic. This is magic, people. Nobody told me this in church. When I was growing up, I thought God was in the clouds somewhere, and he had a white beard or something. Nobody told me that this is an energy. I did go to Sunday school, and they said God is love. I do remember that. And so this is basically what I teach, is that the love that is innately in us, we restrict the flow. And so when we unrestrict that, and we start forgiving people, and we start loving ourselves, and it begins to vibrate out, and we see it, we're not teaching our family. We're not preaching to them. We're not talking about these subjects and saying you should do this and you should do that. No, they feel it based on the work that we've done within ourselves. And then when we start doing it, and our coworkers start feeling something, I've got to tell you about before I started practicing this. Before I started practicing this was before you were working there, Queen. I think Jeff may have been working there. But I would go into meetings, and I would hate most of the people that were in that meeting. And I would go and I would clean out my purse. You remember the better side. She came along after I had done the work, but I'm talking about before I had done the work. I would go into meetings, I'm sure you guys have never done this, but I could not stand some of the people that I was working with. And there was a lot of backstabbing going on there. And there was a lot of name calling going on. And sometimes whispers would come in and you go, oh, she said that? Well, I have a meeting with her in 2 minutes. So then you had to be two-faced. And I don't do two-faced well, not even when I wasn't well. So people would know how I felt by my passive-aggressive actions. I would clean out my purse while you're talking. So I'm not saying that I came out of the womb like this, people. I had to go through some stuff. I had to go through the fire. I had to look at me. Because it's so easy to look at the other person and say, well, I can give you 1,000 reasons why I don't like that person. And that's usually where people are. They will blame, they will pick out all the flaws in another person. And even in the Bible, it says, look at your own self. Take out, you're seeing the splinter in somebody else. You got a whole log in your own eye. And that's so true. So when my eyes started turning inward at myself, is when change started happening. Because I was under the impression that you could change and manipulate somebody else to change them to the way you want them to be. Now I'm a therapist, and that's a sick way of thinking. Because one of the things that we tell people is, you can't change another person. Yet I was trying to change my coworkers, my boss, my blah, 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 you name it, everybody else, but me. Because I could clearly see I was not the one with the problem. Oh, I was so sick. Now, where did that come from? It came from me having an abused background. And the way that I survived when I was little was to do exactly what those kids in Child Haven did. Manipulate, lie, criticize, do a tantrum, get your way, hold grudges, do resentment, did resentment really well, PhD in resentment. But finally, after that path led me, thank God, those people led me to look at myself. So all the people at work that I did not like became my shamans. They were my teachers. They taught me so well to look inward and to look at myself. And let me tell you, most people avoid that. So I'm not saying that that's easy, but let me tell you what's on the other side of that. Miracles. When you start to change your vibration, you actually change the environment around you. And while other people are in chaos and anxiety and depression, you are the light. You are the lighthouse. And you are showing people what light could be. You're showing people. So that's why you're the light of the world. It says in the Bible. And you don't want that light to be hidden. You have it on a hill so that other people can see that there's an alternative to darkness. So in this time where there's a lot of darkness and chaos, we need the light. And it's time to take it personally and say, am I being the brightest light that I can be? And what is light? Light is love. Light is compassion towards yourself first, and then it vibrates out to everybody else and into the world. It vibrates out into the world. It vibrates out and into the world. So if you're seeing something on the news and you're saying, oh my gosh, how dark is that? What light are you bringing to it? What light are you bringing into the world? So let's close our eyes and let's contemplate this as we do a meditation. But before we do that, there's a song that India Ari does. And I remember the first time I heard this song and I thought it was so powerful. Just the words and the lyrics just ring true. And it says, I am light, I am light. I am light, I am light. I am not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the broken pieces of a dream I left behind. I am light. I am not the color of my eyes. I am not the skin on the outside. I am not my age. I am not my race. My soul inside. It's all light. I am divinity defined. I am the soul on the outside. I am the stars, a piece of it all. I am light. So why not define yourself by your source? And that source is light, it is love, it is compassion, and it is a frequency that is powerful. It is not passive. It is something that everything is made up as. And it is you. So let's close our eyes and let's go into meditation. We know that we are not our name. We know that we were put on this planet to flow with the energy of the source. We know that that source has a vibration that is powerful beyond measure. And when that energy is flowing through us, all things are possible. We know that when we put our energy and our awareness on love and compassion, that is what shows up. That we are the powerful ones. We are the change agents, and we are the lighthouse. And when we focus on that true identity and not on the world and the identity that it puts on us, we recognize that that energy is the energy that will change the world. We recognize that our words are powerful because they're coming from that flow that is unrestricted. And we know that this energy is infinite. It never runs out. It never dims because we are the light of the world. You take a deep breath. We come into the knowledge that we are pure light. We let it be so, and so it is. Amen. Wassa, to Elizabeth, to the Baobab Cafe for having me. And we just enjoy this space so much. You're a loving energy, and the Baobab tree is a nurturing tree, and we're here to nurture each other. Love you.
I work with